All right, so this week in a leaked fireside chat, the head of Amazon Web Services, Matt Garman, suggested that in 24 months, there will be no human coders. Everything will be AI. So, as the non-coder of the group, my background's IT. These guys know how to program. And I saw this article and was like, oh my gosh, I got to hear what Bobby, Kevin, and Paul have to say about this because crazy. I went and looked at his LinkedIn profile because I'm like, okay, this guy can't be a coder, right? Like, there's no way he's saying this and has any sort of programming experience. So looked at his LinkedIn profile. It's all program management and business. And
Sales.
I'm like, there we go. And I think
what a shock.
we started recording. Bobby was saying, tell me you're not a programmer without telling me you're not a programmer. And that was exactly the thought I had as well. So you guys, tell me, I think there's a quote in here, Bobby, that you particularly like.
Yeah, coding is just kind of like the language we talk to computers. It's not necessarily the skill in of itself. And I like the word kind of, like, it sounds like the Valley Girl. It's kind of like.
It's like totally.
It's like a language you talk to. It's not really a skill.
Or something.
Yeah.
Something.
So, Paul, do you think you don't have any skill, or are you just like, stealing your employer's money every week?
No, 100%. I just show up, randomly hit keys on my keyboard, and stuff magically happens.
You were just a button pusher.
Yeah, I'm just a button pusher. Literally, the fact that creating business requirements, understanding the needs of your company to understand what products to build and to think about them. I mean, obviously, all of that could be automated. Speaking of automation, isn't like he does product management? I think he has way more chances of being automated out of a job than I do. I also like how he predicts very specific dates, 24 months. I think it's safe to say it's all right, I'm going to make this prediction, but I want to do it when, that it never gets back to me. So,
he does also hedge his bets by awesome amount of time.
Exactly,
It's just 24 months or whatever.
In 24 months, he's not going to be at this company employed anymore. And so he's like, you know what? I got my bases covered. I made a prediction. I was totally wrong, but I'm no longer here. So who cares? So, you know what I mean?
I do think that you could be onto something, though. I do think that the 24 months is significant because of the cloud growth at AWS. So they grew about 17% year over year. And now we're seeing that Microsoft and Google grew about 26 and 29%. He's kind of new on the job. He's got to produce something in here. And they're behind in this generative AI. So they have this thing called Chatbot Q, which they released it earlier, then they pulled it back. And no one's ever probably haven't heard of it. You're listening to the Not Know podcast. You've heard of OpenAI. You've heard of ChatGPT. They have a chatbot named Q. Yes. And it's not as good as Claude. And it's not as good as the other guys. And so they need to
Someone's got to sell it.
Exactly. They got to sell it. And they're going to say, well, ours is going to do all these great things. And there's other competitors, like I think you mentioned, Paul, in our review, that you're using Cursor, which is another one of those kind of code completion tools, so I don't think it's going to replace developers in 24 months, not in any way, shape, or form. I just don't think so.
He's saying it's in one particular area, right? He's saying that this is the area of syntax writing, I think, is his idea, right? He's saying that the job is going to be different, that the job of a developer will no longer be writing syntax. It's basically like sitting in a code editor, writing all the lines out, right? He's saying that part of the job is going to be handled by AI. That promise has been 20 years in the making.
Yes.
Literally, they've always promised that syntax will go away and that we can write applications using just regular English language. We'll be able to tell something and say, hey, I want this application. When I push this button, I want it to send off this form to do this. Yeah, that doesn't exist. It's never existed. It will probably never exist. And we've been promised that for at least the last 2 decades through other applications. Dreamweaver, what was the other one you were talking about, Bobby? The
Front page.
Front page.
There's been a bunch of these WYSIWYG editors that have always promised no code. We're still in a no code bubble. I swear. You can ask people now. They're like, yeah, no code this, no code that. Yeah, but it's not really.
Do you know what the coder's name
complex.
for Dreamweaver was back in the day?
What?
Oh,
you know what we called it?
What?
We called it Dream Killer. That's what we called it. because it was always kind of buggy and just like,
Yeah.
what is this thing doing?
Yeah, it
Even
wrote
back in
terrible
the day,
code.
It would add like so much extra, like
Yeah.
So
Yes.
much
It
what are you
wrote
doing?
terrible
I need all of
code.
this stuff. It's
Yes.
I was gonna make a funny joke. I was gonna say like I could hardly like speak and communicate with my significant other with my communication skills and get to the point. So forget coding with it because it's too ambiguous. There's too many things like, and so like any like language model, it is just kind of guessing based on the context it has and statistically what would make sense, but it is prone to hallucinate. And if you've never programmed, you could ask the same question, type it the same way, it will give you 5 different answers. And that's just the issue with it. So it's not consistent. I think using it as a tool, like for like super smart, autocorrect, like correct or prediction to kind of based on your code base that you're running. But as we talked before, you still need to understand code and to understand the thing that it's telling you actually is valid or not. And you still have to make that decision. I think as a tool, it might be very helpful, but at the same time, in terms of replacing developers, I don't think 24 months is going to happen.
No,
and to that point, let's say that you're asking it to write something, right? Let's say that you ask it to write an algorithm for something, right? You just say, I don't know, whatever it is, the little procedure you ask it to write. It will give you 5 different versions of that. And this comes back to the problem of maybe 4 or 5 of them actually work. Maybe one of them just doesn't work, right? But 4 or 5 of them work. But maybe 3 of them use technology or syntax that you shouldn't be using. And while it looks like it works on face value, I'm not a developer, therefore I don't understand why that particular version of it would be the wrong one to use at my application in my company, because I haven't thought of the edge cases, because I don't understand how it works. That's a problem.
And wouldn't AI just be the ultimate yes man too? Like if you're saying like, hey, I want the program to do this, like a person would be like, okay, well, so that's not really gonna work because of this, this, and this. But like AI would be like, oh, of course, I can totally do that.
It's such a good point too, because it just reminded me of something exactly that. And I don't think a lot of people like, unless you've done it, understand this, but like you could ask like, hey, create this like blah, blah, blah. And they'll be like, sure, I'll do it. And they'll create it. And then you're like, oh, by the way, like this is wrong. And then they'll kind of backtrack a little bit. Oh, I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. This is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Blah, blah. And then you could be like, I was actually joking. The thing that you did before was right. And they'll be like, oh my God, double incorrect the first time. Here's the thing that I really meant to say, the thing that you meant to say. And they're like, nah, I was just kidding. And it just blows up. And so to me, it's like that like the issue I have with a lot of AI tooling, it like 80% there for production is not good enough, and it'll never be good enough because it creates more hassle for you than it saves. So using the tools within understanding their limits, I think you're fine, but trying to say that it's going to replace everybody, and all this other stuff, it's just marketing people trying to sell stuff or build hype,
I do think Matt Garman doesn't understand what a website application is today, what that really means. And even though I know he's selling AWS, I'm sure he's very smart. He's making lots of money. He's way more successful than I am. So props to you for getting ahead of AWS. But in coding world, it used to be just an HTML file and CSS, and now it's HTML, CSS. Then they added this thing called JavaScript. And then we iterated on JavaScript for 15 years. We made 35 frameworks and everything else before it. Then we added SQL, then we added databases, and now we have server-side languages like JavaScript, C# and Go, and all these things. PHP, Python, and then there's the tooling itself that creates things. It's really complex to build an application these days. You have to know a lot of things to make it work. And when you're asking AI to be inside all of that context, and it's a custom solution that solves a problem that no one else has, that isn't really in GitHub, it's really hard for it to do a good job. I use it every day. So I use it like Paul does. I use it as an autocomplete. And when it gives me the ghost text, if I can read that ghost text in like a second or 2 seconds and say, yeah, that's what I want, I hit tab and take it. If I can't, I hit escape and keep typing. And I noticed that I hit escape a lot more than I hit tab.
Your coding is just yes, no, yes, no.
And then I'll change the thing that it gives me. So it's about 80% correct when I get it, and then I have to change it. I also noticed that it tends to skew to older ways of doing things because I think there's more training data there. So you'll see older JavaScript if you're in JavaScript, or you'll see older C#. Whereas okay, yeah, did you know? Okay, we have a different way of defining constructors now. So sometimes it'll get that, and sometimes it won't. In JavaScript, sometimes it'll use the fetch API, sometimes it won't. And it's like, okay, and you have to tell it exactly the way you want it to be. And I keep thinking, Matt Garman, I probably could quiz him right now. Doesn't know what the fetch API is.
Right.
He doesn't know the different ways of doing that. He doesn't know what a promise is. I mean, so like those are the things that you have to know in order to make it do what you want it to do. So I don't know.
Do you think he'll get any backlash within Amazon, like from the programmers and stuff inside?
No, I think he needs to get the 26% year over year next year.
Yeah. So like he said in his statement, 24 months. It's like his runway before he gets let go because he's not performing. And it's like, let me try.
You just
you can't do 29.
Yeah, he's gonna take all the jobs. This is gonna happen. Like, I mean, but I love how it's like, always like the marketing people who like trying to raise capital or sell you something that have these type of statements. But
100%.
when you talk to actual developers, they're like, no.
We've heard this. We've heard this almost exact same statement from the guy at NVIDIA.
Oh yeah, no, he wants
so, and it's like, listen, people, you've got to look at context for this. If the sales guy is telling you it's doing this thing, don't buy the hype. Speak to somebody who actually uses it. That's the only way you can trust what happens here.
And I love how it's like he did it like literally in the same sentence, like all the developers' jobs going away. Please buy our thing. That's really expensive.
It's going to create code. Yes, exactly.
And here's the thing with AI right now. I saw like a study somewhere. The amount of money that's been invested is not the amount of money that it's making. So it is literally functioning at a loss, where a lot of these businesses are literally being like, we thought we were going to make a bunch of money. We made money off the hype of people getting excited about it and investing, buying our chips. But in terms of return ROI for that business that spend like millions on those chips, it's like, interesting. Like we're really not doing anything. And I think like this whole AI industry is going to kind of, like the bubble's going to burst, and then it's going to equalize where we're going to clearly see where hype and where, the reality is. And then things will go from there. I'm not saying that it's not going to have valid use cases, but this idea of replacing, developers. And I was actually going to argue if you think that AI is going to be so good that it's going to replace developers, if you think of the type of work developers do, if you have that type of ability, it's going to replace many, many other jobs.
I'm with you.
Sure.
I'm with you, Paul. I mean, we should start putting this out there and saying it's going to replace project managers, because we can load that Gantt chart in
Right?
OpenAI, and then we can just say finished option 1. I did it.
Right.
Dude.
And then it can calculate whether we're on time or not, and it can send me a message say you need to work
100%.
overtime.
I was just going to say, it can totally hey, Bobby, you really need to step up your productivity.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Literally. When I code, I was going to say, this is how I start my coding ideas. I'm like, you're a project manager. Please help me to think through this business idea I have. Give me and they'll give me a report like, this is the features you want. I'm like, wow, done. Why do I have to talk to my product manager? It's great.
But I guarantee you, I know he's the boss of that, but I guarantee you he's going to be at a dev meeting, and some snarky programmer that's really talented is going to go, I don't have any skill really, man. So I know you want me to work late this weekend, but I'm not really skilled at this.
Let's just ask Q.
Listen, right.
He can work late.
Yeah. Bobby, you're absolutely right too with this point, because you could just be like, the other side of it. Oh, if it's going to replace developers, then you don't need us right now.
You don't need me, right?
Okay.
And he'll be like, no,
Go
you
for
build
it.
the thing.
You build it for us.
I need 26% growth over the next 2 years, guys. Get in there, build some stuff.
A whisper in the moon, a feature scan near. AI say jumper, that's what we all fear 2 years from now. Holding the keys when the machine's learning, coding with ease. No more doubts, the future's here. AI's in control, it's crystal clear. No more doubts, just innovation's flame. In a world where machines play the game. Not just the code, The future's here, AI is in control. It's crystal clear. It's crystal clear. No more death.